everybody, and welcome to 38 Weeks Ago, your weekly podcast about fantasy football. Gameweek 22 is done. How does everybody feel about it? When I look at my team, I left 13 points on the bench, and that kind of hurts me because I made some poor decisions in the midfield. I finished with 59 points. Gusto did nothing, Garnacho got 1, Gordon got 1, and Haaland got 1. Yes, Haaland is back. On my bench, Mykolenko got 6 and Trippier got 7. Everton, for some reason, still continue to produce for me, especially at the back. Pickford was my keeper and he had 10. My captain was Richarlison and that was okay. He gave me 14 points. The best performing player in my team was Julian Alvarez with 13. And Solanke rounded up my 4 best players with having 8 points. The average of the game week was 48 points, so if you got above that, well done. 17 of our 24 players got above 49 points, so we did above average this week. Well done, gentlemen. The highest points tally this week was Thagana Gatheru, who got 78 points. His performance was led by a really strong performance in his midfield. He had Saka, who had 10, James Ward-Prowse, who had 10, he had Foden, who was his captain, who got 12, Alvarez, Watkins, and Solanke also performed with 13, 7, and 8. And then he had Trippier and Leno. Trippier came off the bench to help him out. And this is why it is important to organize your bench in a way that favors you, should somebody not play. The most surprising result of the weekend was Luton 4, Brighton 0. I watched some of this game, and let me tell you, Luton seemed to be very difficult to beat at home. They scored early and never looked back. They were so impressive at home. I saw that there were some people who had even captained Estupinian. Ish. That was not the best decision, because 0 times 2 is 0. They were dominant from the get-go, and they fully deserved everything they got, and even possibly more. Adebayo had a hat-trick. Ogbene had the other goal. Sambi Lokonga from Arsenal. Morris and Barkley had the assists. Barkley played really, really well. So for those of you who still had Doughty, well done. That was a great clean sheet. I'd say the second most surprising result was Aston Villa 1, Newcastle 3. It was surprising for many reasons. 1, Aston Villa lost their unbeaten home record. They had been untouchable at home, and Newcastle, this was their second away win this season. After that 8-0 victory against Sheffield, this is it. They have been poor away from home, and for them to show up when it matters and beat their undefeated team, that was an impressive result. Of course, at the beginning of the season, you would have said Newcastle are the better team, but the way the season has unfolded so far, this was quite an impressive victory. And for managers like Mike Wow, who had Shah, you must have been very happy with yourselves, because he had 2 goals. Murphy and Trippier had the assists. So for those of you who had Trippier, like me on the bench, but like the Ghana who he came on, that must have been great. Watkins got the goal for Aston Villa, and if he had gotten the second one, it would have been a very interesting game. Bailey had the assist. The most entertaining game of the weekend was the last game of the weekend, or should I say game week. Manchester United 4, Wolves 3. This stuck with the game week theme of we played round 1 and you defeated us, and we will show you. Man United won last 1-0, and it was a very fluky victory, if I'm honest. But this one was well deserved. They were the better team from the get-go. They had many disallowed goals, and unlike their first matchup, Manchester United looked like a team this time around. West Ham beat Bournemouth last time, and Bournemouth this time said, "You're not beating us," and that game ended in a draw. Tottenham drew with Brentford last time out, and this time Tottenham won 3-2. Chelsea drew with Liverpool in their previous encounter, 1-1, and they looked like they should have won that game. This time around, it was a no contest, one-sided matchup. Liverpool were the better team by far. Klopp's announcement has really seemed to spur on Liverpool, and they look like favourites for everything right now. Fulham beat Everton last time, and Everton said no. Everton were unlucky the last time. and they drew. Luton were beaten 4-1 by Brighton last time out. They defeated them 4-0 this time. Newcastle beat Aston Villa again. So there's not much of a change there. Nor was it a change for Crystal Palace versus Sheffield, which ended 3-2. Nor was it a change for Man City versus Burnley. But generally speaking, most teams did better than they did the last time around. The best performer this week for fantasy was Bradley from Liverpool. He's been standing in for Trent Alexander-Arnold, and he was immense. He finished with 21 points. Now just imagine if they hadn't considered a goal. That would have been wild. He had 1 goal, a very lovely goal, 2 assists, and 3 bonus points. At this point, we're all wondering, should we bring him in? He's really cheap. Maybe he's a replacement for Robertson. However, Trent did come on as a sub and got 1 point. So it's possible that Trent takes his position back next week and Bradley's back to the bench. In a sense, this brings complications for Liverpool's defense because Robertson and Trent came on, which means they are going to be match fit soon. But how soon is soon? Is it this weekend? Is it next weekend? And therefore, if you have your players, just stick to them. Like I said previously, the most entertaining game was Wolves 3, Manchester United 4. And it's so Mainu scored the winner in the 90+7 minute. It was a beautiful curling effort. Rashford and Haaland had given Manchester United the lead. Then the substitute came on, Mr. Sarabia, and scored a penalty that Neto earned. McTominay came on and scored a header. Then Kilman scored, and then Neto scored. So it was poised at 3-3, and then Manchester United scored in the last minute of the game. It was definitely a fun watch. Second half better than the first. Mainu and Neto got the 3 bonus points, and Haaland got 1. Neto is just a good player. I don't know what it'll take for me to bring him into my team. Like I said earlier, our weekly tally leader was the Ganagatheru. Second was Goodness Gracious Me, Simon Nijua, with 69. And then we had 1, 2, 3 players with 66 points, being Adan, LED, and Melvin Asakania. Number 4 was Dennis with 65. And then we had Mike Wow and Peter Dennis with 64 points. At the top of our table, 2 of the top 4 leaders made blunders with their captain choices. Alexander Mutune, buoyed by Pedro Porro's recent form, decided to captain him. It was a risky move which could have paid off, but in this case it didn't. And 1 times 2 is 2. And so his captain gave him 2 points, and that gave him 37 points, and that made him lose the top position on the table. Leon Mortier, my man, Leon Mortier, he is a bigger Haaland fan than I am because he captained him. As in, Haaland is back, yes, but wow. Because I thought that we'd wait to see how he plays before captaining him. But goodness, he went straight out, chest forward, and was like, I believe in Haaland, it's Burnley. He may start, and he will score if he starts. I just want to, wow, that was bravery. I commend you. Haaland did play, but he came on late, and he finished with 1 point, so like Tune, that's 2. And that gave him 45 points, and saw him drop to number 4. So, we have a new league leader. Goodness gracious me. He had 69 points. He captained De Bruyne, like many of you did, but his real secret weapon was the man they call Olise from Crystal Palace. Number 2 is Don Butlet this year by Alexander Mutune. He had 37. Vic Nyadi of Vic City had 60 points. And Why Are You Running had 45, which gave him 1306. Our leader got 1329 and now has opened a 17-point gap between him and Tune, who had 1312. Between Vic City and number 2 is 6 points at 1307 to 1312. And between number 4 and number 3 is just 1 point. Between number 4 and number 5 is 36 points. So the gap is still there. At the bottom of the table, Jeremiah Obiri must be really happy because now Haaland is back and his automatic captain choice will be playing now and will be available. And in this case, it's particularly sad because Rashford did play well and he's not going to get those captain points. Just above him is Melvin Kathrima. Him and Jeremiah are not making their teams and they're stuck. In number 22, we have Muhammad Jibril, who has 40. Number 21 is Team Kubo, 58 points. Number 20 is Enter the Woo, who had 63 points. And just above them is Tagana Gederu, who had 78. When you're in Tagana's position, those 78 points really came in. So that has given him 1095 points, which takes him over number 20, who has 1091. Team Kumbwa is about 40 points behind with 1056. And below him is Jibril with 1049. So there's a race over there at the bottom as well, because from number 19 to number 18 is also 30 points. And the top 10, there were 5 different captain choices. And captain choices really made or broke your game week. Most popular captain choice was De Bruyne, followed by Alvarez. People really knew that Man City would win, but who to be as captain was confusing. After Alvarez, it was Foden, 3 Manchester City captains. And then we had Richarlison and Pedro Porro. These were the captain choices made by our top 10 players. De Bruyne was our biggest incoming player this week, with 5 managers bringing him in. Diogo Jota was second, with 3 managers bringing him in. Kudus and Haaland were brought in by 3 managers as well. Kudus is back from Africa Cup. He underperformed yesterday, but so did West Ham. 2 managers brought in Walker and Alvarez. 1 manager brought in Rashford, Doughty, Palmer, Bruno, Richarlison, Bowen and Gordon. The most transferred out players of our teams this week were Salah, with 4 managers selling him. Watkins, 2 people lost faith in him. Trippier, understandable, 2 people got rid of him. Gross, 2 people got rid of him. Son, 2 people got rid of him. Solanke, 2 people got rid of him. And people were done with Foden. 2 people got rid of him. I'm really surprised that it took this long for people to get rid of Salah and Son as well, especially given their absences. When it comes to round points of the game week, starting from the goalkeeper position, Pickford had the most points with 10. Leno had 8. Kaminsky had 6. And Petrovic had 3. So that speaks to the clean sheets. There weren't that many. And by not that many, there were only 2 clean sheets this weekend. Given that there were only 2 clean sheets, you'd think that there'd be very many underperforming defenders, but you'd be wrong. Bradley had 21. Fabian Schär had 17. Udoji had 10. Zinchenko, Al-Dakil, Diop, Osho, and Trippier had 7. Mikolenko, Tarkowski, Young, Robinson, Tosin, Castagna, Gomez, Bell, Burke, Doughty, Kilman had 6. So as you can see, sometimes it's just about choosing the right defender. Midfield was where many returns were made. Olise had 16. Eze had 14. The dynamic duo is back. Neto had 13. Luis Diaz had 12. Saka, Rodri, Mainu, and James Ward-Prowse had 10. James Ward-Prowse has been sneaky good over the last 3 game weeks. I feel particularly bad about that because I chose Bowen over him, and I'm being punished. Soboslai had 9. Diogo Jota had 8, so those of you who brought him in, well done. De Bruyne had 7. Rashford, McAtee, Brereton Diaz, Johnson, Maddison, Richarlison had 7. Barkley, Foden, Matheus Nunes, McTominay, Sarabia had 6. Strikers are beginning to get their shit together. Adebayo had 17. Alvarez had 13. Jesus, Tony, Højlund got 10. And Højlund has been performing over the last few weeks. Solanke and Ogbene had 8. Watkins had 7. Mope had 6. Nkunku, Morris, Awoniyi, McBurney and Timo Werner had 5. Awoniyi is back. As we plan for the next few game weeks coming up, it must be important to say that there's a double game week coming up in Game Week 25. And it's very important to note that because in Game Week 26, we have a blank game week. And there will be teams not playing. Chelsea, Liverpool, Luton, Spurs will not be playing in Game Week 26. If you organize your transfers well, you can manage to get out of those players who you will have, or have a strong enough squad so that the players that you must keep stay on the bench. In Game Week 25, Manchester City and Brentford have a double game week. So it might be time to slowly accumulate Manchester City players, and maybe time to bring in Luca Toni. I keep calling him Luca Toni. Ivan Toni. To start off Game Week 23, Everton will take on Spurs. Everton have the most clean sheets this season, with 8. That's right, Everton. Sean Dyche has turned this team into one that is very difficult to beat. If it wasn't for the points deduction, they would probably be higher up the table. Richarlison is on good form, so I'm going to stick with him. I'm not sure if I'll keep him as captain, but he will still be in my team and I will be expecting him to return. He has had, I think, 6 returns in the last 7 game weeks, so you should consider bringing him on if you don't have him. After that game week, their next games will be Brighton, Wolves and Crystal Palace in between a blank game week, so they have relatively good fixtures. For Everton, I'm not really expecting goals from them right now, but I'm going to play one of my defenders, either Mykolenko or Pickford. It will be really impressive if they can keep a clean sheet in the next game, but they have Manchester City after that, so that'll be even tougher. And then Crystal Palace and Brighton. If you don't have an Everton player already, I wouldn't encourage you to bring them over the next 2 game weeks. They're most likely to concede in the next 2 game weeks. Brighton versus Crystal Palace. Olise and Eze are back, so that's it. That's all you need to know. Those are the 2 best players to bring on from that team, and I can't imagine you'd go to anyone else before those 2, so I wouldn't even go by recommending anybody else. However, if you already have other Crystal Palace players, keep them, or change them into one of these 2. As for Brighton, it seems like you really can't know. They have conceded the most goals. It's really something this season for them. They have a nice run of fixtures coming up. They have Crystal Palace and then Tottenham, Sheffield, Everton, Fulham. You could definitely see Brighton scoring in these games. It's just a matter of who. Is it João Pedro? Is it Kroos? Will Ansu Fati be back? You know, I wouldn't get rid of Estupinian just yet. But the strongest return for goals for me comes from João Pedro. And sorry, no, I didn't mean that Brighton have conceded the most goals this season. What I meant to say is that they have kept the fewest clean sheets. Burnley versus Fulham. There'll be nobody disappointed that Burnley lost to Manchester City. Fulham have injury concerns and absences in this game, particularly with Raul Jimenez, and we'll be waiting to see what happens, and that might determine how they play. Fulham are weaker due to their absences, and this is a game that Burnley could get a result. Could. Doesn't mean they will, but they could. And if they do, it will be through Amdouni, Foster, and Odobert. That's about it. For Fulham, it's the usual suspects. Willian, Pereira, De Cordova-Reid. Maybe Robinson can create something. And of course, the players you bring in is really dependent on what you need for your team right now. Newcastle versus Luton. Luton are in great form right now, and Newcastle are in questionable form, but they just beat Aston Villa, who have been in better form than most people. So, what do? Newcastle have a bunch of injuries. Isak, Wilson, Anderson, Barnes, Joelinton, Willock, Pope. But that didn't prevent them from beating Aston Villa. So, I would say Gordon, Trippier, maybe Shaw. Basically, it's Gordon or a defender. Newcastle have Luton, Forest, Bournemouth, and then Arsenal and Wolves. Those are good fixtures, but it really depends on who you get. And I would say if you have Gordon, he's your best bet. If you don't have him, this would be the right time to bring him in. Luton have Newcastle, Sheffield, Man United, blank, and then Aston Villa. This might not be the greatest time to get into these players from Luton. But should you want to do that, Adebayo is in good form right now. Barkley is in good form right now. Doughty has been great over the last 4-5 game weeks. Morris as well has been good for them. They have also been in good form since their captain went down, and so trust the form. In the previous matchup, Burnley have Fulham, Liverpool, Arsenal, Crystal Palace and Bournemouth in their upcoming fixtures, so it's not going to be an easy ride for them, although nothing is easy for them. Fulham have Burnley, Bournemouth, Aston Villa, Manchester United and Brighton. So for the next 2 game weeks, they could keep their clean sheets as they have been. Sheffield United versus Aston Villa. Aston Villa will be looking to bounce back. Watkins is the best bet. Bailey, Diaby, McGinn. And maybe a defender in this game, they could keep a clean sheet if you choose the right one. because Pau Torres has been unavailable and I've seen people still have him. Konsa, Moreno or Cash would be the best bet in their defense. If you're looking at Sheffield players, Bertrand Diaz has scored 2 goals in his last 2 games. McAtee would be also somebody interesting to look at. And then from there, I would say McBurney and Hammer. I'm seriously thinking about bringing Watkins in because they have Sheffield, then Man U, then Fulham, then Forest, and then Luton. 5 good game weeks. Sheffield have Villa, Luton, Brighton, and Wolves. Bournemouth versus Nottingham Forest. Bournemouth drew 1-1 last time out, and Solanke got the goal. He's still in my team, and I'm going to keep him. He's the strongest asset from Bournemouth right now. After him, you have Senesi, Tavernier, Clivert, Scott, Semenyo, Christie. It's really hard to know who the other performer will be from Bournemouth because they just seem to have many options. Nobody would think too harshly of Nottingham Forest for losing to Arsenal like they did in the last game. But the biggest thing that happened in the last game is that Awoniyi came back. And that means that there'll be stronger competition for Wood. It's not clear when Elanga will be back because he has been productive. So I would say Awoniyi, Gibbs White, maybe Dominguez, and Montiel. You know, their wing backs tend to provide assists. So it's just a matter of who will play. And that's a gamble. I don't know if you're willing to take a gamble on a Forest defender. Nottingham Forest have Bournemouth, Newcastle, West Ham, Aston Villa, then Liverpool. So if you're looking to have them, you should be having Forest players for the next 2 to 3 weeks. Bournemouth, for their end, have Forest, Fulham, Newcastle, Man City, Burnley. I would just say just stick to the players that you have. Bournemouth always seem to have a goal in them, but maybe not Senesi. Chelsea Wolves. Well, Chelsea's recent 7-game draw with Liverpool is done, and they'll be looking to bounce back from what was a very embarrassing defeat. Not in that they lost to Liverpool, who were the better team, but the nature of the loss was shameful. But then again, that has been Chelsea this season. They have an opportunity to bounce back against Wolves, and they should be favoured in this one. Chelsea just seem to win games, and this is just one of those games they will probably win for no good reason except that they can. He gambled playing Palmer as a centre forward, and it failed miserably. Where were the pens? No pens, you know? Palmer has been Chelsea's best player this season, so he's the first player from them I would recommend. After that, you kind of know that Sterling will play, and then after that, you're really, really gambling. I have Gusto, but I don't think Chelsea will keep a clean sheet against Wolves. Neto is obviously the first player I'd recommend from Wolves, and then Cunha. After that, Sarabia, and then a defender. If Wolves score, Neto will have something to do with it. Chelsea have Wolves, Crystal Palace, Man City, blank, and then Brentford. That is not a great fixture list. Wolves have Chelsea, Brentford, Tottenham, Sheffield, and Newcastle. For Wolves, those are all possible winnable games. Manchester United versus West Ham. Right now, Haaland and Rashford are your best bets from that team. They have been the best performers of the last few weeks, and at this point in time, having Haaland or Rashford is having a differential. For West Ham, really the best player right now is James Ward-Prowse. He has been really great for the last 3 weeks and is definitely worth a look. After that, it is Bowen and then Kudus. West Ham have Manchester United, then Arsenal, and then Forest and Brentford. It might be time to get off Areola. Man United have West Ham, Aston Villa, Luton, Fulham, before facing off against Man City. So they have good fixtures that they can win. Arsenal versus Liverpool. This is a big game. Salah is out injured. So even if Egypt are out, Salah is still out. He will be available probably after this game. If you're going to get into Liverpool players, Luiz, Jota, Nunez, maybe Bradley? But the truth is, he was probably resting those wing backs for this game. So expect Trent to be back and expect Robertson to be back for this game. For Arsenal, Saka seems to be good for them. I know he has been having weird returns. Gabriel Jesus, Odegaard, Martinelli. Saka, Martinelli and Jesus have been goal scorers in their recent games against Liverpool. They've had 2 draws in their last 2 games and then a split with Arsenal winning and Liverpool winning. Since Jurgen Klopp announced his imminent departure from Liverpool at the end of the season, in their last 2 games they have been immense. They have been scoring over 4 goals. I'm not going to say that they're going to beat Arsenal over 4 goals, but they have a fight about them. It's kind of like a new manager bounce type thing. No Salah, no problem. I'm going to give Liverpool the upper edge in this game, but Arsenal are a strong side as well, and they could definitely get a result here. After the Liverpool game, Arsenal have West Ham, Burnley, Newcastle, Sheffield, and those are good games to get into Arsenal for after Liverpool. So if you're looking to get into Arsenal, just wait for this game week to end and then come in. After the Arsenal game, Liverpool have Burnley, Brentford, then a blank, and then Nottingham Forest. So those are going to be good game weeks for them. Brentford versus Manchester City. Manchester City have started the year with a bang. They are as dominant as they should be, or as they have been. I believe that they will be favourites against Brentford, although saying that doesn't mean much because anybody can make that analysis. Now it's just a question of, will Haaland start? Because everybody wants to see KDB Haaland return. Alvarez is making that difficult. So I would say wait for Haaland's form to return. My theory of Doku not liking Haaland continues. He had a great chance to give Haaland an opportunity to score, and for whatever reason he did not. I just don't understand why Doku and Haaland don't play well together. So of course from Manchester City, if you have Haaland, stay with him. Alvarez of course seems to be picking up at the right time. De Bruyne is back. Silva is there. Goodness, team is loaded. Their defense is a bit meh, and now given that so many defenders are back, I don't even know how anybody's going to choose. So I would say if you have to have a Manchester City defender, just have the goalkeeper. You know he will play. As for Brentford, I wouldn't imagine that people will be coming into Brentford in this game. But if you must, it's Ivan Toney now. That's it. Don't gamble more. But then after that, maybe, especially since they have a double game week coming up, Ivan Toney and somebody else would be okay. Manchester City have Brentford, Everton, and then a double game week with Chelsea and Brentford and then Bournemouth. So they have a good run of fixtures coming up. Brentford after Man City have Wolves and then Liverpool and Man City for that double game week. So I'm not sure even whether it's worth having Brentford players for that double game week. Except to say that they played and you want maybe to get 4. So just get a random midfielder. It's the kind of double game week you don't want to have. The game week starts tomorrow and therefore you have no time. So remember, there's a double game week coming up and there's a blank game week coming up. So plan your transfers accordingly. Other than that, we now have 15 weeks left to go. There's not much time left, guys. They're going to go just like that. I hope you all have a great match this week. We'll see you next week. Bye.